said, my name is Ken Robinson. Welcome to the Olympic Games and Tourism Seminar at World Travel Market. Our title, Hosting the World, the UK's Tourism Plans for 2012. We are, in fact, at World Travel Market. I am a member of the advisory board of World Travel Market. We are having two seminars about the Olympic Games. This year's seminar is to explain the UK's tourism plans for the Olympics. And then next year, which will of course be relatively soon after the results of the Olympics are well in, we will be reviewing the tourism impacts of the 2012 Olympics. So put that in your diary and look out for it next year. But today is all about looking forward. The speakers that you have are a really excellent group of speakers. Chris Foy from Visit Britain, who is head of the 2012 Games unit. He is taking the place of Sandy Daw, who is ill today, but as Chris is the chap who actually does it, I think we've done very well. James Beresford, who is the Chief Executive of Visit England, the agency responsible for tourism throughout England. Martine Ainsworth-Wells, who is Marketing and Communications Director at London and Partners, incorporating Visit London, which many of you will know well, even if you don't know it under its new title, the host city for most of the events of the Games. Len Ollender, who is Director at Sports World, who provides specialist services to companies coming to the Olympics, and Mario Bedini, who is General Secretary of UK Inbound and also the CEO of Jack Travel. Now, I'm not going to say any more about what they do. If they want to tell you, they will, and no doubt it will become clear in what they say to you. I'm just going to set the scene and deal with one topic in particular. There is no doubt that the UK tourism industry is keen to make the most of hosting the Olympic Games, but there are key issues for everyone. The first of those is how we should facilitate the visits of all our guests from around the world to ensure that we're exemplary hosts. We really do want to be the best, not just what happens inside the sports stadiums. The Olympic Games will raise the profile of the UK as a destination, but the question is, how can we leverage that opportunity? And it's not just a question of London benefiting, although obviously most of the events, the bigger events take place. We want to make sure that the benefits of the Olympic Games are spread throughout the UK. And it's not just the Games. We want to make the best of the pre-Games training camps, which a number of nations will have here, and also the torch relay, the Cultural Olympiad, and other tourism-related activities. And in particular, we want to minimize tourism displacement and disruption in 2012. So that's quite a sort of checklist of the things we'll be talking about this afternoon. But the last one on the list that I've just added, how to work within the IOC legal branding constraints, has turned out to be quite an issue for the industry and something which I think we would like to work hard to change for the future. The success of the Olympic Games has always been dependent on hosting tourists and not just the sports. Here's a nice quote for you. During each Olympiad, I read that it will be the last, because if you really want to know, the reporter was poorly accommodated or overcharged in a restaurant, or because the telephone did not work as it should. This is only human. The organisers, therefore, should be more concerned about these points, even though their connection with the ultimate destiny of Olympism appears distant and vague. Now, I'll add who said that. It was Baron Pierre de Coubertin, the founder of the modern Olympic Games in 1930. So not much has changed, has it? Here we are today still wondering as much about how we host those tourists as about the Games themselves. One of the things that happens before the Games is all sorts of people come out of the woodwork to tell you what's going to happen in terms of costs and benefits. This is just one of hundreds that I could have showed you. This one was actually PricewaterhouseCoopers, and you can see that under the benefits, the things that they say are going to be the main benefits are tourism. But predicting and planning for the full tourism effects of the Olympic Games is difficult. I actually carried out an exercise for our Department of Culture, Media and Sport and for Visit Britain to try and do just this, looking into what happens at Sydney and Athens. And accurate facts about Olympic tourism have in the past been hard to discover because the organising committees of the Olympic Games disband immediately the Games are over. And there's usually no political will to fully analyse the costs. Olympic records are kept of ticket sales and not of tourists, so we know how many tickets are sold, but not necessarily who to. Post-Olympic results reflect so many variables like SARS in Asia after the Sydney Games that it's hard to see what the actual impact of the Games was. But that said, some of the UK tourism sector are probably the first to realistically appreciate and try to plan for negative effects. And there is a commitment to produce accurate tourism data about the 2012 Olympics for future benefit. So there's going to be much more available after this Games from all of the agencies than there ever has been in the past. It should be really useful. We, in researching what was likely to happen, decided to divide Olympics tourism into two things. Olympics-related tourism, which is everybody that comes for the Games, the IOC, officials, competitors, team supporters, sponsors, media and spectators, and Olympics-motivated tourism, which is people that come to Britain who are spurred to make that choice because of the image that they see from the Olympics and of this country. And that's in two parts. One is it's going to happen anyway, no matter what we do, and the other is potential. It's dependent on marketing. And the first of those undoubtedly has low net tourism benefit in the actual operational year, low net tourism benefit. The second one is potentially much, much greater, but requires a lot of effort. And we have to realistically anticipate and try to counter disruption, deterrence, and displacement. We're lucky if you were at the opening ceremony of World Travel Market yesterday. You will have seen the Secretary of State for Department of Culture, Media and Sport, Jeremy Hunt, who was actually opening the event, and he is the Secretary of State in the department that deals both with tourism and with the Olympic Games. So in a way, we've got all the knowledge in one place. We're spending about 9.3 billion on it, and the government is anxious that we get the best from it. Belatedly, a strategy was produced which has in it the aspirations, which are that we should have benefits of 2.1 billion at 2006 prices, accruing to the UK over the period of 2007 to 17. But opinions about Olympic tourism differ. This quote from Visit London, I think, is pretty typical of what most organisations of a sort of Quango type nature believe, and that is that over the longer term, the Olympic Games will be very, very beneficial for the United Kingdom. Visit London thinks 1.5 billion into the economic benefit to the city over 10 years. This is yesterday's World Travel Market Organisers survey of businesses in tourism in the UK. Did they think they would benefit from the Olympics? 33%, neutral, 49%, or negative, 17%. So there's a very mixed view about what it may do. And if you read the sort of facts that come out from the European Tourism Operators Association, you can see in this graph put out by them this weekend, the red line indicates what they expect will happen from current inquiries in 2012 compared to this year. A massive dip over the period of the Olympics because regular tours can't continue to run. That's as you would expect, and no doubt much of that space will be taken up by UK domestic tourists. The last topic I wanted to cover is about the Olympic brand and marketing. Now, IOC policy has these words within it. The strength and depth of the Olympic brand is the foundation of Olympic marketing. And one of the goals of the Olympic movement is to nurture the Olympic brand to ensure the value of Olympic partners' investments. And the goal of each Olympic partner is to maximize its investment by aligning the attributes of its own brand with the values and attributes of the Olympic image. Pretty clear stuff. And that leads to this being a requirement on bidding cities. I've grayed out all the bits that you don't really need to read, that a host country has to ensure that there are no other marketing, advertising or promotional programs in the host country, the activities of which will have any impact on the marketing programs related to the Games. It's a pretty wide statement. In this country, that's meant 2 acts of Parliament. The first one protects all of the Olympic names. The second one protects Games 2012, 2012, London, medals, sponsors, summer, gold. It is illegal under those acts to promote any tourism product with the words summer of 2012 in a sentence. It's illegal to tell your customers who want to come to the Olympics that you can provide facilities for them unless, and there are some caveats to this. The key issues about those legal constraints are, first of all, that our industry believed that we needed clear guidance about this. It's pretty tricky stuff. So we developed a brand guidelines for tourism businesses. And any of you interested in the facilities that you will provide next year, if you're in the UK or abroad and are considering these events, you might like to read that document. But we think there's a bigger issue. And that is the IOC doesn't recognize that the tourism industry in a host nation and throughout the world has to provide services to people to travel to the Olympic Games. And to do that, we need to be able to talk to them in realistic language. At every Olympic Games, the branding guidelines get tighter, and every Olympic Games, it gets more difficult to do this. So here's a caveat to this morning's seminar. Those of you that were at the opening ceremony yesterday saw the Secretary of State from our department responsible for the Olympics and tourism, without any logos behind him, without any film from the Olympics. You saw film from Eurosport. There was no ability to talk about the Olympics because of the potential commercial associations. We're here to learn. So here's a caveat, everybody. This discussion this afternoon and all speakers' presentations are given in good faith for information purposes only in order to review all the tourism impacts of the London 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Games. All rights of LOCOG and IOC are fully recognised and respected. No speaker nor WTM's organisers seek to create or imply any commercial association with the Olympic Games or to promote any commercial services in any way through this event. Did you all hear that? Good. In that case, let's move on to something much more interesting. Chris Foy, head of the 2012 Games Unit at Visit Britain. Chris.
Thank you, Ken. I feel I can say anything now with that disclaimer. Thank you for inviting us, and apologies from Sandy not being able to make it today. What I'm going to cover today is talk about probably the biggest ever marketing programme that Visit Britain has ever put on. Great Britain, you're invited. Give you a flavour of that, and then go on to three of our key areas around, specific areas around the Olympics. Media, working with sponsors, and the work we're doing to support the industry here in the UK. We've been tasked by the Secretary of State to produce the best ever marketing campaign by a host country around the Olympics, so no small challenge there. We're in the spotlight and we have this huge opportunity to really harness the potential of the light being on Britain over the next year. Our profile is all very, very high, and it's already being recognised. We've already, as I'll come on to in a second, seen some global events that are turning the spotlight on Britain and London in the last 12 months. Our ranking on the Nation Brand Index has gone up to third place recently, so we're already seeing the impact of events like the Royal Wedding. And we're seeing growth from BRIC markets, and we're seeing encouraging signs from our mature markets as well. You'll have heard the fantastic news yesterday, I hope, that the Secretary of State has not only granted us this huge challenge to produce the best ever campaign, but we have £27 million in additional funding to deliver an image campaign around the Games. So not only the best campaign, but probably the biggest campaign that we've ever run as well. So let's have a look at the marketing activity that goes behind this. Our aim over the next 4 years, as I say, is to showcase Britain. It is to attract visitors from emerging markets and to refresh our appeal among our old friends in our existing markets as well. We're leveraging this by focusing on 3 events. We kicked off earlier this year, back in April, with the Royal Wedding. And then we move into next year with the Diamond Jubilee, and then of course the Olympic and the Paralympic Games. 3 unique events, uniquely British events. And of course, like any campaign, we have 3 phases. The image building phase that we're in at the moment, using the wedding as that ignition point to get people's focus on Britain. Then as we move into next year to counter the stay-away effect of the Games, using events like Festival 2012 and the Torch Relay, which we've heard a lot more about in the last few days, and of course the Games themselves. And then closing the sale, when the torch moves on, when the games close, that's the moment for us to close the sale, to get people to make the commitment to travel to Britain and spend their money here. To coin a phrase from our Canadian cousins after the Winter Olympics, to harvest the afterglow of the Games and keep momentum going through to the next big events we have in this country, like the Ryder Cup, like the Commonwealth Games in 2014. Now, great to have the funding, but of course this comes with targets, and they are challenging but achievable. Our success in delivering this campaign will deliver an additional 4.6 million visitors to Britain, spending £2.3 billion by 2014. So big returns from a big campaign. The programme is structured in 3 parts. We started early this year with an invitation from celebrities, people like Judi Dench and Jamie Oliver, extending an invite to the world to come and experience their Britain. The next phase will be an invite, or it already is, an invite from the industry, with some of our campaign partners offering tangible offers, exciting offers to get people to commit to come to Britain now and into next year. And the next phase, launching later this month, will be an invitation from the British public, a VFR campaign, encouraging their friends and their family to come to Britain and enjoy Britain next year. We've created an advert. It's the first time in 10 years that Visit Britain has had a television advert internationally. I'm going to try and play it to you now, but my history with technology is always pretty low on this, so it looks like we're going to plan B. So bear with me for 60 seconds and enjoy our advert. There's some fantastic voices and music going with this.
You're inspired. You're invited. You're in tune.
You're invited.
You're involved. You're in awe. You're invited. You're infatuated. You're invited. You will find your invitation to Great Britain at visitbritain.com.
Well, if you couldn't hear it, I hope that you enjoyed the images that went there. Now we just have to refine the presentation and we're back in the room. Brilliant. Well, whether you could hear it or see it, we've already carried out some research on the advert in the US, in the Netherlands and in India, and the early indications that it is already ticking the right boxes and inspiring people to make the consideration to come to Britain for their next holiday. How is the Great Britain branding working elsewhere? To flick through a few examples. This is an example how we're working with the FDS ferries. This is an advert. If your Swedish isn't up to it, it's saying outdoors is great, and this is one of the core pillars of the campaign, showcasing the outdoors, culture, heritage, sport, music, shopping, and food and drink. Another example here, using Cardiff. This is a campaign with our partner Hilton that's running in the UAE. Again, this is the culture pillar, showing how it works very much with our tactical advertising in those markets. So that's very much a very quick overview. It gives you an idea of what the creative looks like in this Great Britain creative. You'll probably see a lot more of that domestically very soon. So moving on to our specific Olympic activity. And the first one I thought I'd just quickly cover is our partnerships with Olympic sponsors, just to illustrate how this is a real benefit of the Games for us. Now, commercial associations, as Ken just very clearly illustrated, are the preserve of the partners of the Olympic Games, and quite rightly so in many respects. They're the people who are putting the money up in many cases for the show. However, by partnering with these guys, it means that we as a national tourism agency, and city tourism agencies as well, have the opportunity to extend our brand reach to the partners' audience. So in this case, you can see up here what we're doing with Samsung. This is one example. Samsung is obviously one of the largest mobile devices companies in the world. They are the official partner for mobile devices to the games. By working with Samsung, we've created this app, the Best of Britain app. This is one example of the work we're doing with them. And this is getting out to probably 25 million of their customers with an inspiring messages about Britain, whether they're travelling here or not. And this will continue with some work that we carry on doing with them during the Torch Relay next year. Elsewhere, we've worked with Visa Inc. On our Vancouver Olympic Games, Winter Olympic Games. We had a media party sponsored by Visa. That brought us in a lot more reach to the work we were doing there. And these things also work both ways. Through our social media channel, Love UK, we helped Eurostar to launch their introduction as an Olympic partner last year, supporting their triathlon event in London. The next slide illustrates a bit of creative thinking by our team in New York. The girl you can see in the picture is Heather Mitz. She's the captain of the US soccer team. We worked with the US Olympic Committee earlier in the autumn, bringing over 7 of their Olympic and Paralympic athletes, taking them around Britain with their following, people following them through media, through social media channels, and with ongoing promotional work subsequent to the trips to really show the best of Britain to their fans and the US audience. And I'd like to think that in the 5,000-year history of Stonehenge, I was the first person to organise a bit of keepy-uppy among the stones. Those give you an example of the kind of media work that we've been doing. We've spent the last year, my colleague Paul Gallagher in particular, meeting with a lot of the accredited broadcasters and unaccredited media who will be descending upon London in the next 12 months. We've been offering a wide range of services, which you can see up on the screen there, that gives them the support they need for their time here in the UK. We're working in partnership with the BBC Motion Gallery to get together some fantastic film that can be handed out to other broadcasters to help them fill their programming hours during the sport period during the summer of next year. If you think about some of the programs we have in the UK, like Coast, where there's amazing, inspiring aerial photography, it's that kind of imagery that we can help to get out to the world and to secure our target of generating £1 billion worth of PR coverage throughout the course of the campaign. Now, working with the industry, obviously we have a lot of partners working with us who have put in a lot of money to work with us at the top end of the campaign, but we're still engaging the wider industry. The VFR campaign I mentioned just now will provide a platform for businesses across the country to work with us and a toolkit which they can use. We encourage businesses across the UK to engage with us on the PR front. We've produced some very useful new guidelines for businesses to use to give them a steer on how they can benefit from the media attention. And we continue to provide the sales missions and the other platforms that are the meat and drink of Visit Britain services for the industry. Increasingly important are the social media channels, and that will be an important part of the VFR campaign as we step forward. Specifically on 2012, last year, in partnership with LOCOG, we launched this website, tourism2012games.org. This is the go-to place for anyone in the tourism industry, whether in London or a B&B in the Highlands. We feel that there is something useful on here, whether it's the brand guidelines that we put together with Ken last year and LOCOG, through to advice on what you can be doing. And images which are available free to any businesses to use rights free. And here's some of the latest ones that we've had commissioned from across the country, showing our iconic locations with Olympic and Paralympic sport happening. And all these are free to tour operators, to media, to anybody who happens to be in those areas. You can use these to promote the country. Elsewhere on the site, very useful documents that people can download. As I mentioned, the brand guidelines, and indeed the top tips on working with the media. So that's a real quick step through our work for the next 2 or 3 years beyond the Games. It's a very, very exciting time to be working in tourism in Britain at the moment. What's the impact so far? Well, I think in terms of the outlook, I think it's too early to say exactly how things are going to pan out next year, but our forecasts are to see an uplift throughout 2012 of around 3% in terms of inbound business. A clearer picture will clearly emerge in the coming months as we get into 2012. We have already seen growth from some of our mature markets, which is very encouraging, particularly in Europe and North America. And we expect to welcome actually 1 million Australian visitors this year, which is not bad for a population of 20 million that such a sizable proportion would like to head to our shores. So it's not just simply our mature markets, but the growth markets as well. I'll finish now and hand over to James to talk from the England perspective, just to really emphasise the huge opportunity we have over the next 12 months while the spotlight is on this country to really harness the games coming to Britain. Thanks.
Just as James comes up, thank you very much, Chris, for that. Do come up, James. Those of you who are from outside the UK may not know we've had quite a shake-up of our tourist boards recently. Visit Britain have been instructed to focus much more and only on marketing abroad. We were without a national tourist board for a number of years until relatively recently. Visit England is the newly created tourist board for England, and James is therefore, as its chief executive, the person carrying the weight on his shoulders of making domestic tourism work next year and looking after inbound tourists once they get into the country. James.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you very much indeed. Am I just doing that? Yes, I am. Perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and a very warm welcome. Nice to know that England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales and London's international ambitions are in the safe hands of Visit Britain, Chris. I'm a huge supporter of that, and partly our role is to dovetail into the activities of Visit Britain. So you've got to visit England, you've got to visit Britain. Sometimes it's a bit confusing. We are absolutely shoulder to shoulder. Our focus, though, is, as Ken has said, on the domestic market. So what of the domestic market for 2012? Well, we've gone through, as a nation, unprecedented and dramatic change in domestic tourism structures since the Games were announced. And that's been an ever-developing backdrop in the recent years. We in this country have seen the rise of localism. Regionalism across this country is now no longer something that we see in tourism support structures in any shape or form. We have destination management organisations which focus very much on the destination. So my role as Chief Executive of Visit England is to try and work with a range of destinations and orchestrate their efforts. Now, I'm not saying that's an impossible task. It's not the easiest task in the world. But it is my endeavour and my efforts to try and make sure that we do work together to the benefit of domestic tourism. And since the Games was announced for London, we have a new government with a new government tourism policy, and that policy ranges from things such as red tape and signing and so on and so forth, but to a focus on the Olympics, which we all welcome. So 2012, if I can use that phrase, a help or hindrance for domestic tourism? Well, quite clearly, it's a massive, massive opportunity for us to turn the eyes of the world on what I believe is a really tremendous product here in England. There will be thousands and thousands of watching eyes, thousands and thousands of journalists, and we need to work very closely to make sure that they beam back, tell stories of great experiences they've had in this country. So it is a great, great opportunity. But, and there will be those, and I know many of you will have seen press stories recently, and it is perhaps accepted wisdom from previous host nations that during the year itself, the domestic market doesn't do well. Maybe the domestic market thinks, actually, everything's going to be expensive, everything's going to be full. Maybe the domestic market thinks it's just about tourism. And maybe the domestic market just sits in front of the TV and watches it on TV. So actually, we've got a job to do to encourage people, domestic folks, to holiday at home. And we've got to seize the moment. Chris alluded to some of the major events. Well, of course, the Olympics. And let's bear in mind that whilst, of course, the Olympics focus is on London, there are Olympic events, there are training camps and so on and so forth happening right up and down the UK. And we've got what I think is the best cultural program, the best festival program that I have seen in any Olympic Games happening throughout the country. It's a dramatic and exciting program. We've got a torch that goes just about to every part of the country, and it will allow us to showcase those parts of the country and encourage local people to participate in an Olympic event during the year. And of course, our Queen celebrates a Diamond Jubilee, and there will be events and activities that will celebrate that up and down the country during 2012. So it is an opportunity for us to seize the moment, to make the very most of all this fantastic activity, this fantastic buzz, and persuade people that they should stay at home. And I would say, ladies and gentlemen, that not only is perhaps that the icing on the cake, actually we've got a great product here, a fantastic product, and we need to do as much as we can to draw people's attention to that. This slide, which doesn't show the picture very clearly, but what it does show is that some of the fantastic events that we have during the year take place across the country. So that I've got to even take my glasses off to read them here. But there's a Dickens Festival, a Shakespeare Festival, a Thames Festival, a pageant. There's an awful lot that's taking place that, yes, of course, will be of interest to visitors to these shores, but by gosh, it's going to be of interest to domestic visitors as well. The whole panoply of the offer that we have must be showcased during this year. So what are we doing about it? Well, much as our Secretary of State and government have put new monies into the international marketing of this country, they have very wisely, in my view, put additional monies into the domestic marketing of this country. And at the centre of our campaign will be a television commercial which promotes staying at home. Now, Chris was referring to the fact that there hasn't been a TV advert playing overseas for Great Britain in living memory. Well, that's absolutely the case in this country too. There hasn't been a major TV campaign. And working with our other devolved nations, working with London, working with Scotland, working with Ireland, working with Wales, we want to ensure that we're raising the profile of staying at home. So we're going to be running a very intensive burst of 60-second adverts focusing on our major tourism strengths that go out between February and March of next year and encourage folks to stay at home. Now, we reckon that this campaign, which in total is worth 5 million, will be seen by 93% of ABC Ones in this country 16 times. And that's as good as a Cadbury's cream egg advert, and that's as good as a Vauxhall car advert. So I wouldn't like to say you're going to be heartily sick of this advert, but you'll be pretty familiar with it by the end of the campaign. So we're really going at a national level to flag up the importance of staying at home. Now, I'm afraid we haven't finished our advert yet, and so I've just got a couple of storyboards here because we think it's important that we take a bit of wry humour to all of this. And sometimes tourism campaigns can be a bit solemn, but we're going to have a tongue-in-cheek approach with a bit of wry humour. The person with her arm out is as yet a still to be signed but very well known personality who is standing at the bottom of the steps discouraging English visitors, English residents who would normally go overseas not to get on that plane and say there's nothing here for you to see. She will then run through with a number of voiceovers why it is much better to be staying in this country. You simply can't do the Queen's Jubilee in Malta, for example. You can't see some of the pageantry and events that we will have during the festival in France, for example. So we will be taking quite a wry look at some of the alternatives that we believe we can do better. Now, you'll have seen from Chris's presentation that we're using a great lockup, and this is a government promotion to really ramp up the awareness of Great Britain overseas, and we are using this domestically too. We want folks to believe that holidaying in this country is great. And so the whole focus of these campaigns is to say to people, basically, you'd be mad to go overseas, and would be drawing people to a site with offers, which we hope will be discounted offers for around 20.12% off a range of offers. It's not 2012, it's 20.12% offers. And that's all going to be driven to one website that we will run with our other nations in Scotland, Ireland and Wales. And there will be a range of offers that take people direct to booking sites that will allow them to enjoy 20.12% discounts and other offers during this year. So it's a call to action. Now, we've tested all of this. We just didn't make this up on the spur, and when we took those storyboards through with people, we tested these, and our user group said, you know, when they'd seen the advert, when they'd heard the messages, well, why would they want to go abroad during 2012? They really liked the idea that great puts a sense of pride back into holidaying in this country. And here's just a few sound bites from folks. Said, you know, basically, they were enchanted and a bit disappointed in themselves for not having stayed at home before. Makes people feel proud about staying at home. Haven't seen an advert like this that celebrates that pride and the staying home at message ever before. So I think we're on the right lines. But it's not just a flash in the pan. You know, it's not just about a TV campaign. This is a 3-year campaign that we are using. We're fronting up with a TV campaign. We'll be using social media, travel, trade works, CRM, outdoor, print, press, and PR ad infinitum to a 24 million campaign over 3 years. Now, you know, maybe that's not as big as some of the other budgets in the world, but it's very targeted, very specific, and very clever, and will keep this market in this country in 2012 and beyond. And I would say, using a sporting analogy, 2012 it's all to play for 2012. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, James, for that. Again, a word of explanation for those of you who haven't followed the recent changes in this country. There were significant cuts to the funding of both Visit Britain and the National Board, and cuts elsewhere, of course, in public spending. And for a long time, the mantra from government was, there is no money. And yet, just in the last few days and weeks, these budgets have emerged, being applied not perhaps exactly as the agencies and so on might spend it, but nevertheless, they are very, very useful. Now, our next speaker is the person who perhaps has to carry the most of the responsibility for tourism coming into London next year, which will have more of the business of the Olympic Games than anywhere else. Visit London was a new agency created under Mayor Ken Livingstone, who had responsibility for tourism. He fortunately saw the great value in tourism for London and as a global city. And then when the new mayor came in, Boris Johnson, I have to say I think it was much due to the efforts of Martine and her successes around the world in promoting London that he saw that it was a necessary activity and the agency was given continued life. And recently it's been absorbed into London and Partners, where Martine has been promoted to look after all marketing, but no doubt she knows the most important job is tourism. So come and tell us, Martine, what you're doing next year.
Thank you, Ken, for those kind words. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about two things. Firstly, what London is doing in reaction to the phenomena of displacement, which hopefully we're all familiar with. And secondly, what we're doing about the media opportunity, which we think is the big opportunity for the Games. So I'd love to talk about more, but I've only got 10 minutes, so I'll crack on. Okay. We've talked about displacement during World Travel Market. I'm sure many of you saw the ITINERARY report at the weekend. There are many figures and statistics around about this. We've done our own research at London and Partners about the issue of displacement. I've been talking to people about it since 2005. So this isn't new news for us. But what we have done is tested this dilemma with our customers. Because at the end of the day, we can look at what's happened in previous Olympic host cities, and we can talk to previous Olympic host cities, but we're London, and we have our own customers, so that's what we did. We spoke to our customers and said, what might persuade you to overcome these fears that you have about cost and expense and so on? And they gave us a very, very clear answer, which is, tell us what is happening in London that might not happen again. People keep saying, oh, London will be magical, it will be exciting. Really? Prove it. So that's exactly what we've gone about to do. So I think we're the first city to really look at this from that strategic perspective. Limited Edition London was the campaign that we launched in September in reaction to this phenomena. It's a multimedia campaign and will really play a key role in putting out one very clear message to the world, which is London is open for business. It's the world's premier international visitor destination, and over the next 12 months, it will be more magical than ever before. So I'm just going to pull out some content. Essentially, Limited Edition London, it's a calendar. Imagine a diary from now until the start of the games, which is packed every single day with things that you're never going to be able to do in London again. And we've tested all of these events with our customers, so we know they're definitely events and activities they're going to react to. So, Leonardo da Vinci at the National Gallery, brand new, never been seen before works, very time limited, may never be seen again. Buckingham Palace, you may have seen some of the staterooms during the day. Have you ever seen them at night? You'll be able to. We've talked about Diamond Jubilee. David Hockney, Damien Hirst, putting on Work's first major survey of Hirst work, exclusive to London next year. Hockney taking over the Royal Academy from early next year, never been seen before Works, and he's pretty much got the Royal Academy exclusively to himself. So if you're an art lover, there's a huge amount to do in London. We've talked about the Festival 2012, many of those activities taking place in London. So Dickens, for example, his 200th anniversary, the birth of the great man. If you've ever fancied sleeping in London Zoo, you will be able to next year, should you want to sleep with the animals, of course. So there's a whole raft of activities that are happening, and our job is to promote them under one umbrella. Limited Edition London, more magical than ever before. We've made a promise, and we are most definitely going to keep it. So the campaign launched in September. Here's just some examples of the creative that you may have seen in wherever you're from around the world. Very enticing. If you're from America, Europe, Australia, you may well have seen this campaign already. It's launched and live, and will be running right through until summer next year. But we're also working very hard with the trade. We appreciate that operators and agents play a huge role and are still very important in promoting London to their customers. So it's really important that we engage with them. I was in the States last week talking about Limited Edition London, sharing ideas that agents and operators could promote to their customers. So a really important pillar in our work. Moving on, the London Media Centre. The eyes of the world literally are on London right now, and that focus and that spotlight will increase over time. So, London's the best big city on earth. How do we tell the world? We've got to. It's our opportunity to do it. So we'll do this via the London Media Centre. The London Media Centre will be a real focal point for media pre and during games time. You may well know that rights holding broadcasters, so those that are interested in promoting sport, will be up at the park. They're interested in results, whether Usain Bolt broke the world record, who won the swimming, that's what they're interested in. All of the other media will be looked after in the London Media Centre. So it's a great opportunity not only for London, but also for England and Britain as well. We expect around 6,000 media to come through the centre, the physical centre, which will open 2 weeks prior to the start of the games. And registration's open right now. So if you're media in the room and you haven't registered, londonmediacentre.co.uk is the place to go. Register now. Registration closes at the end of March, and the online centre goes live in May. So it's a physical building. What a beautiful place if you're a journalist to go and work. I've been to media centres in other host cities, and they tend to be sort of quite dull, boring sort of temporary boxes that are constructed for the purpose. For those of you who don't know this space, it's 1 Great George Street, right round the corner from Houses of Parliament. You can just see Big Ben on the top left-hand corner, peeking round the corner. The picture on the right-hand side will be the working press centre. So imagine you're a journalist, you'll actually come, plug in, sit, and do your day-to-day work in this space. So beautiful, enticing, but we don't want the media to spend all of their time in the media centre. We want them out and about across London and across the rest of Britain. How are we going to get them to do that? We're putting together a content programme for media right now, working with our London partners and also with Visit England and Visit Britain to get that Britain content. And our key really is to say, we know the media will want something unique, they'll want something that they can't normally do in London or the UK, a bit of celebrity. And when I mean celebrity, I don't necessarily mean, Jude Law rocking up to do something. Local celebrities are of great interest, we know, to international media. So What have international people come and done in London? Have they opened restaurants? Have they started businesses? What have they done? Have they contributed to the great diversity which is London? And clearly it has to be of international resonance. So we're working on this programme right now. But it will cover culture, it will cover innovation, it will cover business, it will cover sport and sporting heritage. And in developing that content, we'll have a whole scope of activities for journalists. So exclusive openings, free entry to attractions, regular fam tours, case studies, we'll put forward spokespeople, we'll have round tables, we'll have debates. So there'll be a whole host of activities happening over the period. So an example, what a day might look like on a media centre programme. Could be a breakfast briefing in the morning, talking about the food scene in London, which hopefully you've all experienced during World Travel Market, followed by perhaps an exclusive behind-the-scenes viewing at the Tate. A roundtable with Richard Reed, who's the founder of Innocent Smoothies. You may have experienced those in your time here. A sightseeing tour and some hospitality. So a really packed day that media can dip in and out of. We'll also have broadcast positions around the city. So some pan-London positions across Trafalgar Square, more London where our offices are, and right across all of London's boroughs. And we're talking to broadcasters right now about those opportunities. So all in all, this is what we want the streets of London and Britain to be full of during Games time. People telling a fantastic story about this city and about this country to the world. And if we get our job right, we will hopefully essentially create a 6-week advertisement for London and the UK across the world and entice lots more visitors to come and visit our great city and country post-Games time. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I think we'll have questions at the end.
Just to tell you all that we will be going on to a discussion immediately after the next two presentations, so do write your questions down and we'll hope to tackle all of them. When we had a seminar for the UK tourism industry a little while back, the first one actually to focus on what would happen when the Olympics came to town, we needed to hear from somebody who really knew what this meant for National Olympic Committees, sponsors, others coming from other nations to the host nation. And there we found Len Olander, whose company Sports Worldwide. Len, I think, this is your 8th Olympics, Len?
Yes.
So after 8, I think he knows the script. Len, come and tell us what we need to do, or what you will do.
Don't do the math. It's not 8 summer games. It's 8 winter and summer together. Otherwise, I look great for my age. Thank you very much. Yes, this is my 8th games, and each one is, it's like having a family. Each one's a different child. And so many people have been asking, in fact today, well, what's London feel like? Well, what's happening with London? And you think, well, the child's not born yet. I really don't know how this is going to work out, but certainly my wife is carrying a very large baby. I think it'll be one of the largest Olympics that we will ever see. Things will change. Things always do have to change. So what I want to talk to you today about is, now that my friends have invited the world here, we're the people that will have to actually deliver and put the programs together. So I'm going to give you a little bit more of a look at what the programs and the products are that are going to be going on that actually make the games happen. If you look at the Olympics, it's a pyramid or an iceberg. Basically, the organizing committee's job, LOCOG's job, is to run the Olympic Games as a sporting event. Many of us read in the press, LOCOG's not helping me in my neighborhood, they're not doing this, the IOC isn't addressing these problems. But at the end of the day, their existence is to put on the games and to make sure that when the race starts, that the athletes are there and that the race starts. Honestly, if there's not a spectator in sight, that doesn't matter. The success for these organizations is to make sure that these sporting events happen. Now, we're lucky. We get to come, we get to look at it. So in terms of what's happening on an official basis, those top 4 organizations really look at that official part of the program. So when you hear in the press that LOCOG are purchasing rooms and we've got the transportation programs, there's a small group of people that are looked after in that sphere. A lot of those would be, from a LOCOG point of view, would be the sponsors. So any of the sponsors, both the IOC and the national sponsors, fit in that top bit. Everything else is down below. Now, a company like Sports World, we work on both sides. So we'll be helping the sponsors deliver some of this stuff as people are invited and come to London. But also, we need to engage with all of you, whether you're a tour operator, whether you're a restaurateur, a hotelier. As you can see with that list, there's an awful lot of activity that goes on below the line that doesn't really get talked about. So when Martine was talking about displacement, we're one of those gaps that will come in and hopefully buy up some of the rooms and some of your services that might not be the demand might not be at the same level that it is normally. Just to look through those, you can see that some of those are normal everyday tour operating and related programs, but then there are some different ones. Martine was talking about accredited press. There's a whole group of non-accredited press. And what are they doing? They're here now. They're doing their stories now. So a lot of the business and a lot of the Olympic activity isn't just geared to the games time. It's also geared to now. We were talking earlier that this is the games. During the games is usually when my phone doesn't ring and I get to relax a little bit. So be careful that you put all of your energy and all of your time into the games when in fact now is the time you can be doing business and looking at new opportunities. The tourism from overseas will be divided in two. Basically, we've got tours that are coming as official hospitality guests from sponsors, and those would be from National Olympic Committee sponsors, as well as the top sponsors. But also the public from all of these countries, because in each country there are official agents that will distribute and put programs into the market. So I'm just going to talk about that aspect because you'll hear a lot of it, and the fact that a lot of people didn't feel that they got the tickets that they wanted to get here in the UK. Well, there are only so many tickets out there. It's all divided into a big pie, and countries who have their own Olympic committees and have to support them through ticket sales also get a little piece of that pie. So the IOC has set up groups of authorized ticket resellers. They're ATRs, one of those things you might see someday, an ATR. Sports World is one of them. What it means is a country, a National Olympic Committee, will hire an agent to help link the country and that organizing committee back to the host city. So it's up to us then to have relationships with the tourist offices, with the hotels, with all of those services that I showed you on the last slide, that we can build packages so those people can come. And who are those people? They're just everyday mom and pop spectators and fans. Think of what we see in past games with the Dutch. You know, they're absolutely everywhere. There must be a great concession for T-shirts over there to get the orange T-shirts everywhere. So they're coming, and they may come with or without an organized program, but that's the one of the key components to the international guests that are coming. Sponsors and the suppliers, National Olympic Committee sponsors, they are as important, of course, as an IOC or a LOCOG sponsor, because they're the ones that are helping create the programs that are supporting the teams. So once again, it always comes back to the teams and the young people that are coming over to participate. Friends and family. Also, you'll have an awful lot of National Olympic Committees that do an awful lot of work with the Irish who live in London, with the Australians who live in London, with the French, the Italians. Wait till you see those communities rise up and support all of their countrymen. Now, what that does is they're probably not going to be buying rooms for many of you who might have hotels here. They're probably going to be sleeping in your guest room and on your floor. So one of the things that I always say in an Olympic city that people don't quite realize is they're coming. Whether you invite them or not, whether you know that you're related to them or not, they will come. So that 6 years ago when you were in Sydney and you met someone at the pub and you said, next time you're in London, give us a call. Well, thank goodness for Facebook. They will find you. They will show up. So during the games, what we've got official packages that are done by the organizing committee. We've got packages that are already happening, that are packages that you can buy to London with or without the Olympics, that will continue to run. Friends and family I've just spoken about. And then we have never had an Olympics so close to a major population base. You know, we're pretty much on the next door to 400 or 500 million people. That's never happened before. Athens was close, but didn't have the infrastructure. Sydney was on the other side of the world. Beijing was isolated. For the first time, we've got people that can get on a plane and get in their car and drive over here for the day. And think about it. If Paris had won these games, and France was doing this, you would think about, let's get in the car and let's go over. Let's get on the train and let's go over for the day. So that day visitor is going to be massive from some key countries, especially when we've got spectators looking after teams. So imagine the footballers and how motivated they are to follow their teams. You've got handball, hockey, you've got, you know, all of those people that are come over as spectators. An Olympic hospitality agency will be a company, again, Sports World plays on both sides, and there are quite a few companies that do this, and we're in charge of managing the assets of the sponsor. So a sponsor gets rooms, maybe in your hotel that you've organized to give a contract with LOCOG. We then take over the management of those rooms and turn that into a tourism package. It's a hospitality package. It can be for prize winners, so you've seen all the ads of EDF and all the rest. Buy our product or enter this competition and win a prize and come to the games. That infrastructure we need to build, and that's pure tourism. It's just like any incentive program where we come to the hotel, we've got the allocation of room, we've got to feed you, we've got to transport you, we've got to give you something unique, we've got to make your program better than the next guy's. The other part of a lot of these programs is they will incentivize staff. So some of the companies will put programs together linked to staff. Most of those are a day program. So if you are you work for Lloyds Bank, you would have an incentive program and you'd come down to London for the day. And they'd have a hospitality center, take you to an event, etc. And the other would be, which gets all the press, the VVIP programs, which are B2B, B2C. It depends on the program and it depends on the scope. All of those programs will either have people that are here domestically or coming in from overseas. So a company like Sports World has worked with Visit Britain and all the various organizations over the past 5 years to get ready for those programs, because many times we also have to work in the country with the sponsor through these organizations, because it's not just the games. We've had maybe 3 years of build-up through programs and incentives to culminate in the Olympic game program and project. What will they be doing? So this is a sample itinerary. They come in, they arrive, they will, let's say they're staying in the West End. They will be picked up at the airport, so we need to hire and contract with you to pick them up and to take them into town to the hotel. We take them out to the park. Most of the Olympic packages that you'll see in the market will include a visit to the Olympic Park, because that will never happen again. The Olympics is only there once. So virtually everyone, if they're coming on a program, and a lot of the tours and a lot of the tourism that's coming in, they'll be at the park. The second thing is they might do something iconic. You know, we're blessed in these Olympics to have Horse Guards parades, Wimbledon, Greenwich. All of those are great iconic locations that you know, the organizations from the mayor's office to Visit London, Visit Britain, etc., are pulling together some really unique experiences that we can put into our program. So not only are the venues iconic, but we've also got some really great programs going on that will be once in a lifetime. That's going to make a whole different experience for London. You know, a lot of people who are invited to the games or who will be coming here have been to London or to the UK before. So what's going to make it different? Not only the Olympics, but all of these other things that we have to put together. So as you can see in this itinerary, they're eating, they're walking, they'll have museum time, they'll go to the events, and they'll be really experiencing London as an Olympic city, which is not the London that we know today. The aspects for all of you, if you're in business here as a hotelier, if you're a tour operator that brings business in here, this is just new business. It's people, these spectators are not necessarily tourists that are going to buy a package to come on a holiday to London or to the UK. A lot of times we look at them, these are the spectators. These are people that might be working in a job that's affiliated with the games, and they're here because of that. So it's new business, it's new contacts, it's people that you're probably not going to meet here at World Travel Market, and it's not people that you'll probably really find in some of your marketing. The city does change. During the Olympic Games, London will cease to be London. How you get to work, if you're from London, will change. Everything about it will change, and it's wonderful. So when they say stay, you're really staying, but you're staying in a foreign city. It's all new. You know, a quick story at the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne, a Scottish couple that we had met had finally made it. They had rented a camper van in Sydney, and it took them 6 months to work their way around the country, and they got back to Melbourne. And it was the day of the opening ceremony. And they got to the outskirts of Melbourne, and they were totally lost. And they just stopped some man in the street, and they said, look, we're trying to get to our hotel in the middle of Melbourne. Can you tell us the way? And he said, oh, it's just too complicated. Move over, I'll get in, I'll lead you there. Well, they got in all the traffic from the torch. It took 4.5 hours that this guy was in this car with these people. 4.5 hours to go what should have taken about 15 minutes. And they thanked him, and they were at the hotel, and he went off, and they never got his name, and they don't know how to contact him. And they were in tears, because how incredible was it that someone just gave their time? But that's the spirit. That's what happens during games, and it'll happen here. A lot of the programs that we're working with are bringing in, they're not changing what they do well, they're just giving it an Olympic theme. Now, we're not supposed to use the word, but it happens. So if you have an event, if you have a venue, do what you do well. It's amazing how you can come up with some ideas to make those themes work. That's the kind of thing that we're buying, and that's what the tourists who are coming in will be attracted to. Again, I spoke about the displacement, because even though some of the normal business is leaving, there is new business coming in linked to the games. Also, I think that you really need to look at the fact that the guests that you'll have in your restaurant, your hotel, or on your tour, it's quite diverse, and it's, again, people that you're not going to normally find. It's everything from the top CEOs to the mom and pop from the hockey team. In terms of actually delivering and being part of the games, which some of you hopefully will be, there are always perceptions as to how it all comes together. The organizing committee and all the programs have really looked at price, because we have fought for years in Olympic cities with the cost of rooms and other services. The fair pricing scheme is here. One of the best things that I feel is happening in London is people have really understood it. I think there's been enough time where you can read and understand that a hotel room at £500 a night that normally goes for £175 a night will stay empty. And at the end of the day before, it will be empty, and you'll be selling it for £150. I think that message is out there, and we can see some great pricing throughout the market, which is going to help us all. The last thing we wanted, and it's been many years of a campaign, that we would be an expensive London. And the level of activity, we need to really look at how those programs that we're working on, the advertising campaigns, etc., address that. Because in the past at other games, people haven't really addressed it. We have, and hopefully it's going to work. So just a couple things about some of the cities. You know, with Sydney, we had such an incredible increase in hotels and the infrastructure of tourism in Sydney and throughout Australia. Those games really brought a regional benefit. Of the guests that we took to Sydney, 82% took a pre or a post tour, and that was up to 10 days. Now, they went to KL and Singapore, and they may not have stayed in Australia, but for the region it was a win-win, and Australia and the tourist board embraced that. So you almost have to sell us what we want as opposed to what you want us to buy, because then it did flow over into some major some extra revenue and tourism in Sydney. In Athens, for any of you who've been to Athens after the Games, the whole Plaka area, the airport, the infrastructure, the roads, never would have happened unless it was accelerated by the deadline of the Olympic Games. Having lived in Greece with our family for 4 years before the Games, they don't like to do deadlines. And they did a deadline, and they're about to do another. And it was quite amazing how the Games really pulled everyone together to make this happen. And there was an awful lot of cooperation in completely different areas that you never thought about, where people would say we don't normally work together, but they did. Beijing, it was an open door policy. We were having meetings and talking to people from a business point of view that we would have never had any access to. So that hopefully will go on. And I'll just say a quick word about Vancouver. If you look at tourism, if any of you studied the tourism product up in Scandinavia, I'm sure we can all say, who ever heard of the word Lillehammer before the Games were there? And if you go downstairs to the Norway and the Scandinavian stands, they've all got tours to Lillehammer. So if you go to Oslo, Bergen, if you're on the Hurtigruten, there's Lillehammer tour. Now Vancouver, I wonder if people really knew whether Vancouver was a suburb of Seattle or just a suburb of Toronto. But Vancouver's on the map now. It's on the map not only as a tourism destination, but as an Olympic city, and that legacy goes on forever. Thank you.
Well, there's somebody who knows his way through the maze. It's more difficult, of course, if you're an established tour operator or somebody working with inbound business to this country, and you find yourself not being an authorised ticket reseller and not knowing what you can and can't say and do. And Mario Bedini, as General Secretary of UK Inbound, has a whole organisation of members in just that position. Mario.
Well, good afternoon. I've clearly got a lot to learn from Len, so maybe we should meet up later. But I have two roles here. One is as General Secretary of UK Inbound, and that's the trade association which looks after all the tour operators and other services which go towards making the UK tourism product. And my other role is as CEO of Jack Travel, and we have been in the world of inbound tourism for over 35 years. So when we won the Olympics back in 2005, clearly it was extremely exciting news. We loved the fact that we won it. It was great kudos for the country. It promised great business opportunities, and of course it also meant that we beat the French, which was a little added bonus. So during that 7 years, there was a long lead up to understanding not only what it was all about, but how to maximize the Olympics and actually find out how it works. We in the trade, we've been doing our job for many years. We all have different customer bases, be it leisure travel, business travel, incentive travel, and so on. And we do know our customers, and we do know them well. And what became very clear that most of our customers do not have Olympics business. So it was for us to find out how the whole Olympics thing worked and how to really make the most of it. So we at JAC Travel and sort of many of our competitors set up little mini working groups and so on to find out basically who has a distribution, who has a ticket, who actually visits the Olympics and for how long, what their patterns are, and how they spend. And to a large extent, we need to understand what LOCOG did, because LOCOG was this new name that appeared on the block that seemed to have a lot of hotel rooms in the marketplace, and in essence we weren't sure whether it was a competitor or someone who could work with it and so on. So there's quite a lot for us to learn, and I suppose the core question really for us at the end of the that's me for us was, whilst we understood this was going to be a really fantastic experience and the greatest show on earth, but was it going to be good for business? And the other thing that came up very quickly, and it's been mentioned before, and I'm afraid I'm going to mention it again, was the displacement effect. This displacement effect came up, and we weren't really sure what it was, but it became very quickly clear that our regular tourists, people who came in year after year, were probably going to come in dramatically reduced numbers during the Olympics period. Over and above that, I mean, London, as I'm sure you all know, is already a very, very busy city, and we weren't really sure how it would affect and how long the displacement effect would last. And I'm sure you've all seen the ITOA survey that came out last weekend, and I like to think it is the extreme, but what it is saying, and it's the early one of the early surveys on the displacement effects, it is saying that tourism to the UK overall is likely to be down 20% next year, and during the Olympic period as far as or as much as 95% down, which is fairly dramatic, and we really do hope that they got that one wrong. So from all of our studies and understanding and work that we did, and you know, we, for example, went to Vancouver, we went to South Africa just to see who does what and who comes. We broadly found out that there were 3 or 4 sets of people who come to the Olympics. Len clearly knows a lot more about this than I do, but this is kind of our back of an envelope research. But we found that broadly there is a whole contingent of staff, people who come to work here, be they in security, in media, or working for the various Olympic organisations. So they come for quite long periods of time, but they are here to work. So they're pretty tied up with working during the day. Then there are the corporates through the official or a whole body of unofficial sponsors who are invited by a corporate or there are some kind of incentive programs. They seem to come for somewhere in the region of 4 to 6 days in a wave, an Olympic wave, and they are hosted. So broadly, they will be entertained, they will have accommodation, they will have meals, and they will be doing the whole Olympics thing. So they will be going to the stadium and attending the events. And then there are the public who, in one form or other, have bought packages, and they may be local packages, they may have come from overseas, and they have bought a package, including a number of tickets in some cases. And in many cases, these packages, and I've seen them, are not cheap. Some of these people save from Olympics to Olympics to come to watch these events, and they are sports enthusiasts. Sometimes they come to watch a particular sport. They may be heavily into handball or volleyball or whatever, or they may just come for the Olympics experience. So it does seem that those are the 3 core bodies of people who come to the Olympics. What we did find out, and this is information that we've shared with the whole membership, is that they do not act like normal tourists. They come here for a very specific reason, and it is not for core tourism purposes. Things like the timing of the events really does dictate, to a large extent, what they do. So their free time, their time to do things, is based around when the events take place. So that is important that all of us in the industry keep a very close eye on when the events take place, and it does mean that we may have to be more flexible in the way we do things. And they are here primarily for the Olympics. They are here, number 1, for the Olympics and for the Olympic experience, and number 2, to see London. So it is Olympics first, London second, and that came out very, very clearly in all the work we've done. The other thing that is a phenomenon which I came across initially in Vancouver, and it's become clear as I've done work here in London, that the Olympic houses, which are springing up all over the place, are a very big focus for the Olympic visitor and for everyone involved in the Olympics. So that's where a lot of people will go to in the evenings and after the events. And there are a lot of them in London, and I've been keeping an eye on how many are appearing, and a lot of there are some very large ones like the Dutch and the German and the Russians, and there are lots of little small ones popping up all over the place, and that will be a big focus for evening entertainment and so on. And the other thing that became very clear is they will buy merchandise. Merchandise is a very, very big thing in the Olympics, and everyone wants a T-shirt and a hat, and pins are a very large part of what happens in the Olympics. So we, as an inbound industry, have had to react and will have to react to make sure we maximise not only 2012 but beyond. And the key actions are, and they are very, very simple. It's number 1, pricing sensibly. In the early days of leading up to the Olympics, we were finding that some of the pricing at all levels was getting out of hand, and that it really was scaring people off and making really making some of the Olympic programs unaffordable. The other And of course, if we scare people off in 2012, they're not going to come back in 2013 and beyond. The other area, of course, was be flexible. There is a myth that the Olympic tourists will come along and stay for the 18 nights. Most of the 18-night bookings that we've come across have all been placed now. So most of the inquiries that we're getting at Jack Travel and that our members are getting in UK Inbound are for the shorter stay. So we have to be flexible. We have to be flexible on the length of stay. We have to be flexible on our hours of opening and on last-minute changes. There will be a lot of last-minute change. We have seen that people come to the Olympics as events change, as different countries get into different finals. We will have to be flexible in the way we deliver the goods. And I guess above all else, the one thing that stands out for me and for all of us is that the level of service that we give from arrival into the country until departure from the country has to be exceptional. We want the message that goes out via the media that this has been a great event, that people are friendly, that this is a place that people want to come back to, and that it's been and that it is affordable. We don't want it to be an Olympics where people have a negative media from us, because this is absolutely, without a doubt, a wonderful event, and we can all maximise it, and all the great work that's going in from the tourist boards will pay dividends in the future if we absolutely maximise everything that we do in 2012. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mario, for that. I think maybe picking out one factor for everything we've heard this afternoon, there are the people who know or have the legal rights to run tours to the Olympic Games. Either they're part of the Olympic family, they're overseas national Olympic committees, and those, for instance, Len's clients, he's used to working with them, and that bit will work well. Then there's the normal tour operators. The ITOA report was talking about European tour operators who are used to bringing regular customers here. They don't have those rights. They can't get their rooms at the time that the Olympic Games is happening, so they are badly affected, and it's very hard for them to see exactly what they can do with whom and when. And then there's the other lot that Len mentioned and Martine alluded to and James and Chris did, everybody who will come here to be part of this great event. And actually that lot are quite difficult to organise in a group sense, but they will be here and they will no doubt make use of the rooms that otherwise aren't taken. So look, a lot of talent here who knows the answers, but what are the questions? Do we have some questions from the audience?